blood of Christ means more to you now than it did before we were studying the Ten Commandments. I just love to offer that prayer. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I know I'm saved, but I need that prayer, and you need that prayer. Then don't forget, that's Luke 18:13. Everybody know Luke 18:13, chapter and verse and content. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And then Philippians 2:13. Philippians 2:13, it's God that worketh in you both the will and to do of his good pleasure. I'm so glad someone said to me not long ago, said, you know, that whole thing of envy, I just find that envy welling up in my heart, and I just told him that it's a good sign that he knows it's there, because many people are envious and they don't even know it. And the fact that he knows it is a big step in the right direction. And don't think I don't have an envious heart. Dr. F.B. Meyer said a very significant thing. He said he just sort of looked down on people who were envious of others. But he said something happened in his life to let him see he had an envious heart too. He said for a while over in London, people were talking so much about F.B. Meyer. F.B. Meyer, the Bible teacher and preacher, F.B. Meyer. And then he said one day there came on the scene a Bible teacher named Dr. G. Campbell Morgan. And he said when Dr. G. Campbell Morgan came along, people weren't talking quite as much about F.B. Meyer as they did before, and he realized he had an envious heart. Sure, your natural heart's envious. My natural heart's envious, but I'm glad we don't have to stop there. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And it is God that worketh in you both the wanting to do and the doing of his good pleasure. Don't forget that shortest prayer in the Bible, Psalm 12, verse 1, help, Lord. I love that. It's such a short prayer. Did I tell you one person said he liked it so much because it reached heaven before the devil could get a shot at it, you know. I love that prayer. All right, up at the top of page 55, the seventh commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. Violations of the seventh commandment. In addition to the violation of the marriage tie, mentions several other ways of breaking the seventh commandment. In connection with your answer, see Matthew 5:27-32 and 1 Corinthians 6:9. Now you know what 1 Corinthians 6:9 says. Is it 9 or 8? Let me just check. Be sure. 1 Corinthians 6. I think I've been telling people it was 6:8. Oh, no, that's a different one. 6:18. Add that, please, in your notes. 1 Corinthians 6:18. 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, flee fornication. Oh, how important that is. Flee fornication for yourself. That means uncleanness. And help others to flee fornication. We'll go on with that in a moment. Now, Matthew 5:27-32 is very important. Every man needs this, married or unmarried. Whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Oh, how important that is. Now, you'll notice that the word thou shalt not commit adultery and the word fornication are sometimes used in a limited technical sense. That is, an unmarried person commits fornication. A married person commits adultery in violation of the marriage tie. That's true, but it's also true that the Bible uses those words in an overlapping way. And this thou shalt not commit adultery also includes fornication. For instance, when Jesus says in Matthew 5:27-32, whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with his heart, he isn't just talking about married people. He's talking about all men, all people. And let me mention 4 ways of breaking this commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. The first is the obvious one, breaking the marriage tie. Breaking the marriage tie. Some time ago, there was an Indiana Statistical Bureau which gave this estimate. I don't know just how they arrived at it, but I would think this is a conservative estimate. The estimate was that there are 10 million married men in the United States who are habitually untrue to their wives. 10 million married men. I think the number would be far more than that. And one reason I think so is we have so much more television now than we had then. And no doubt about the fact that many people watch these movies, and of course a lot of women listen to the soap operas. And the soap operas are just built around the idea of breaking the marriage tie. It's perfectly possible that at least one in this class, it could be several in this class, will one day marry and be divorced. Oh, it's a sad thing. Now there's one scriptural ground of divorce, and that's immorality, unfaithfulness on the part of the husband or unfaithfulness on the part of the wife. That's that scriptural ground of divorce. But oh, I'll tell you folks, the sky's the limit on these things. I just heard today about someone that you wouldn't know in this class who has been separated from his wife. And it's just that kind of thing goes on over and over. You say it isn't divorce yet, but separation itself is wrong because it means that the person's a liar. Because I tell you, my wedding vow is sacred to me. I wonder how many of you men and you ladies reread your wedding vow. You may say you don't even have it. Well, reread Ephesians 5, because that's the real wedding vow. And we need it these days. The second violation is all impurity. Fornication, impurity on the part of an unmarried person. Adultery on the part of a married person in violation of the marriage tie. The secret sexual sins, self-abuse, is a violation of this commandment. It's a very common sin among unmarried young men, and it's also somewhat common among those who are married. Self-abuse. The third violation is evil thoughts. If you go down the road and you see an impure billboard advertisement, and you don't mean to look at it, the first look is sin, but the second look is sin. And I'll tell you, any red-blooded person needs the Lord constantly. I need Jesus. See, I'm an old man, nearly 80 years old, but folks, don't think I can't be tempted to impurity of thought or impurity of act. Don't think I can't. And anybody can. Sometimes you hear a person, well, I'll mention this in terms of another application just a little later. Evil thoughts. Job 31:1 is a great verse for every man. It says, I have made a covenant with mine eyes. How then should I look upon a virgin? I've made a covenant with mine eyes. Every Christian man needs to say that. Every young fella needs to say that. I've made a covenant with mine eyes. I often wonder how much adultery of heart and mind is committed around the average newsstand, magazine stand, reading a newspaper. When you men and women read the newspaper, do you ever pray that God will keep your mind and heart pure while you're reading the newspaper? And I don't want any hands on this, but I wonder how many here read Ann Landers or Dear Abby, Abigail Van Buren. That kind of thing is just loaded for impurity. It's just loaded for impurity. Folks say, I just like to read what's going on in people's lives. Yeah, and how many impure thoughts go on in your own mind when you're reading something like that? And I just love to pray, Lord, help me to read everything I ought to read, no more, no less. Wouldn't it be wonderful if between now and the time I meet the Lord face to face, I'd never read anything He doesn't want me to read, but I'd read everything He wants me to read. Oh, that's important. All important. Evil thoughts. Again, let's take that verse. Whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. And some just translate that word lust after to desire. That's the regular Greek word meaning to desire. looketh on a woman to desire her, hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. The fourth violation is adultery by proxy, P-R-O-X-Y. You know what is meant by adultery by proxy. That is, dressing in such a way that you help others to have impure thoughts and minds. Oh, every girl needs to pray about this constantly, that she'll dress in such a way that she won't cause men to stumble by the way in which she dresses. Somebody told me of a preacher who said this shocking thing to a group in a congregation. He said, some of you women here have had sexual relations with 100 different men this past week by the way you've dressed. Indeed so. And somebody says, you know, they'll often bring this up. Well, now, women used to wear dresses all the way down to their ankles. But things have changed. Yeah, but 1 Corinthians 6:18 hadn't changed. 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, flee fornication. And are you dressing in such a way that you don't introduce impure thoughts to people's minds? If you don't help them to have impure thoughts. You say, well, they're wrong if they have impure thoughts, and so are you, if you lead them to that. I don't hesitate to say, people say, well, styles change. But there's some things that never change, and I'll never change on this. I know I won't. It's always sin for a woman to wear shorts. Always sin. You say, but now, suppose she wears shorts, and it's not in the presence of men, in the presence of women. Folks have often asked me this, what about a girls' camp? In a girls' camp, girls wear shorts. Well, no, don't do it. One reason is because they're nearly always men on the grounds. But the second reason is even more important. You are setting a lifelong pattern when you do that. Here's a girl whose mother warns her against this kind of thing, but the girl's stubborn. You know, she doesn't want to be different. Her friends wear shorts, and why shouldn't she wear shorts? And you know what she'd say to her mother? Mother, I went to that good Christian camp. At that good Christian camp, they wore shorts, and it's all right to do it. It's always a violation of Scripture if a woman wears shorts. I don't care what the styles are. People often say, things have changed. Surely they've changed. The church is becoming more and more like the world. That's the main change that's taken place. And I'm getting ready to preach on the book of Jude for a group of preachers next week. And boy, right at the beginning, I think it's the 5th verse that says, ye know all things once for all. Well, now, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot. But one thing it means is, I know once for all, it's always sin for a woman to wear shorts. I like to compare this with Ephesians 19. Ephesians 19 tells of the burning of the books. When Paul ministered at Ephesus, there was such a revival, they burned the books, the heathen books. I tell you, when there's real revival in the church, you're going to have the burning of the shorts. Don't even have any around. You say, well, I don't want to waste them. I'll give them somebody. No, I'll give them somebody else. Burn them. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Somebody says, oh, that's old-fashioned. That's Bible, folks. That's Bible. And also many, you just don't have this at all. And from time to time, I go to churches. I don't think anybody wears shorts coming to the Sunday church service. Now, I was in a place up in Virginia where they just had a sign up there. Said, no slacks. See, well, I'm not sure about putting a sign there. If some unsaved woman comes by and is going to come in church, I don't want her to drive away because she wears slacks or wears shorts. I want her to come and hear the gospel and be saved. But, more than awful, the Sunday night service often is more informal. You have women wearing shorts and men wearing shorts. You say, what about men wearing shorts? Well, remember, men can tempt women just as deftly as women can tempt men. Now, the Bible presents it from the man's standpoint. The Bible says, whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her And it doesn't just say women look on men to lust after them. But the same thing holds good. I think there'd be a greater temptation for women, for men, than for women, but it's the same thing. Usually I'm very much opposed to anonymous letters. You write a letter and you'll sign your name to it. The general rule is if anybody will write an anonymous letter, he's just a coward. Stand up and be counted. Stand up and be counted. But there are exceptions to a rule like that. And here's one. Years ago, when I taught the Seventh Commandment at the Bible College, I received an anonymous letter. And this girl or woman, whoever she was, just said, please say something to the fellows about dressing so that they won't introduce impure thoughts to the girls. I was so glad that was anonymous. She didn't want me to know who she was, and I didn't want to know who she was. See, that's a good place for an anonymous letter. Something like that. But it worked both ways. You know, we've had fellows playing basketball. Don't like the idea of the fellows wearing sweatpants. Boy, I like it. Believe me, I like it. Not only can girls be tempted this way, but in these days of homosexuality, when it's all coming out in the open more and more, men can be tempted by men, and women can be tempted by women. Don't you think they can't? And all folks, we need it. This isn't old-fashioned. It's just plain old Bible. It's just plain old Bible. And you know, often when you deal with a group of teenagers, you'll find their minds will just drift on you and not paying attention to much. But when you come down to something like this, you take right here, I think I've had better attention on this than I've had on some of these other things. Boy, it's revealing. And a lot of these so-called Christians, well, they think nothing of it. Now, here's where mixed swimming comes in. I've made it my rule, I don't accept invitations to speak at camps or conferences that have mixed swimming. That doesn't solve everything. I went to one camp and they asked me to come, and I said, I don't go to camps or conferences that have mixed swimming. Well, they had it so they didn't have it, but they came to the Bible class dressed in shorts. And to me, that's even worse than the other. But I don't believe you can really expect the power of the Lord to be in your group if you have mixed swimming. And all churches go on picnics. And I know I preached in churches. They didn't personally invite me to come, and I was glad they didn't, because I wouldn't have gone. You say, oh, your example's part of it. My own purity of mind is involved. Now, you know, often you'll get this answer. Don't believe in mixed swimming. The person says, I don't have a dirty mind. I don't have a dirty mind. I have a mind that can be tempted to be dirty. You have a mind that can tempt to be dirty. Sometimes I just like to give this answer. Now, don't get mad at me when I say this. It may be your mind's so dirty you don't even know it's dirty. You don't even know you're being tempted. Because if you yield a lot to temptation, you don't even know you're yielding. See, your mind's so dirty you don't even know it's dirty. Oh, how we need this, folks. And a lot of folks say, well, if you do this with young people, you'll drive them away. You won't drive them away if they're real. You see, the remnant, that means the part that really wants the Lord, will respond to this. Some of them will stay away. You say, well, we don't want this. They often say, this fellow is really good with teenagers. And what they're often saying is he lets down the bars with teenagers. They like him because he doesn't cut across the grain with them and let them know they're sinners. Everybody needs this. Even when you fellows play basketball, the girls are there, even when you wear the sweatpants, they can be tempted. Because there's a sense in which basketball is more of a man's job than a woman's job. And you take a lot of these girls' basketball teams, they're all wearing shorts and all. Well, folks, that's just filled with adultery. Adultery of mind and heart. I have a niece who's supposed to be a very fine basketball player. I've never been to see her play. Used to be at a certain secular high school. And I've never been to see her play, and I'm not going to go to see her play. Because sure I could be tempted. Sure I can be tempted. But, you know, if you yield a lot, you don't even know you're tempted. If you yield a lot to it. There isn't a man here that doesn't need to pray for purity of thought. There isn't a boy that doesn't need to. And there isn't a girl here that doesn't need to pray for purity of thought. I wonder how many of you girls constantly have this experience, that you're dressing in a way that you know is pleasing to the Lord. Do you ever pray about the way you dress? You say, well, I'm just going to be around the house today. You need to pray about the way you dress. Because a lot of girls are just leading fellows into impurity. You know, sometimes I'm almost tempted to pray this. I'm not sure I've ever prayed it, but you know, sometimes you can think these things in such a way, you think heavenward, and that's prayer. But sometimes these girls that dress so immodestly, and you know, in the summertime, and right now we're in what you call Indian summer. In Indian summer, you can hardly go anywhere without seeing some woman in shorts or something like that. And I'm just tempted to pray sometimes that those women who dress like that will be raped. So they'll learn what they're doing. So they'll learn what they're doing. And you know, there's some people who would object to my speaking as plainly as this. But you notice this? They speak plainly about this, and they don't like when I speak like this. But they let their kids watch everything on television. And that stuff on television is not a warning against this. That stuff on television just inclines them to do it. You take this whole rock and roll music. I know there's some of you who like rock and roll music. Folks, that stuff is loaded with adultery. I call it the boll weevil wiggle. You know, you're just all this cavortion and everything. Why, folks, some people have actually taught that music is amoral. That is, it's not moral, no moral issue in it. I don't see how in the world they can say that. How in the world? Now, lots of kinds do. Waltz music tempts me more than this other stuff. This other stuff, I just wonder if human beings would ever like some of that stuff. But waltz music, that's pretty stuff. Yeah, but it can bring you to immorality in your own thought and in your own life. All right, that's the 7th commandment. Then the 8th commandment. And brother preacher, ask God to guide you how you handle this. If you handle it and step on people's toes, some folks are going to say, I don't want my young people to be under that ministry. But they don't mind their young people watching all this television junk. But every preacher owes it to his group to face this. The way I do it with this group may be different from the way you do it, but do it. Do it. Don't just jump over that 7th commandment. I used to say this to people. I know some of you are too refined to be tempted to these things. I don't say that anymore. Nobody is too refined to be tempted to these things. The 8th commandment is, thou shalt not steal. Notice the violations of the 8th commandment. The time is pretty close up, so let me close on this next to the last one. Past stealing. Why is it true that past tense stealing is present tense stealing unless restitution is made? That is, unless you pay back and give back what you've stolen. It is true because some sins have a present continuance. They were committed in the past, but they're still being committed until the thing's made right. For example, I wonder if there are any of you who've cheated on the test since you've been here at school. If you haven't made it right, you're cheating right now. Because on the books of this school, you have a certain grade. But you didn't make that grade. You made a lower grade than that. But it has a present continuance. And I hearts rejoice the way I've seen young people who are open to the Lord on this. And as someone in the class here who was talking to me about one of these things, and I was just rejoiced. because he's sensitive on it. Well, lots of young people are not sensitive at all on these things. If I stole something in the past, I'm still stealing it till I give it back. And if you cheated on a test, you're still cheating until you go to the teacher and make it right. And you say, well, the teacher might flunk me. Let the Lord take care of that. I've had precious experiences with people who made these things right. When I was up in Virginia at Shenandoah Bible College in Roanoke, there was a man in the class who was a graduate of Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And he told me later, he didn't ask my advice about what to do, but he cheated. And so he just had already received his degree, and he sent it back to the president. And he said, I haven't really earned this degree because I cheated when I was here at Vanderbilt University. Well, what would the president do in a case like that? You know, it made me think more highly of that president when the fellow told me what he did. He received a letter from the president, and the president returned the degree to him. And he said, I am very happy to have you as a graduate of Vanderbilt University. I thought it showed that old boy had something on the ball. Dr. McQuilkin told us that he taught one summer, as before I entered the Bible college, at Winthrop College up in Rock Hill. And the president was talking to him about it. He said, cheating on tests is a shipping offense. We ship anybody who cheats. Dr. McQuilkin said, what would you do if the cheating was confessed? The man said, I never thought of that. See, he had never had anybody confess it. See? Said, I think I would incline to be lenient. Of course he would. The person comes there and nobody's told on him or anything, and he confesses having cheated. He wants to be right with God. Wants to be right with God. You know one reason why it's such a serious thing for a person to cheat? Because if you cheat on a test here, or cheat in homework or anything else, there's a strong probability that after you're married, you'll cheat on your husband or you'll cheat on your wife. Indeed there is. Cheating, that's a serious thing. One of my friends estimated that 90% of the students in schools will cheat if given a chance. One professor at the University of South Carolina told one of my fellow faculty members years ago that he took for granted that every student in school would cheat if given a chance. He said, I'd be careful not to give them a chance. Well, I don't think he's right. I don't think all of them would, but most of them would. I mean, if it really came to a showdown, they thought they're going to flunk this course if I don't cheat. Or if you've cheated in the past, go to your teacher and make it right. Go to Mr. Wilkinson, the principal of the school, make it right if you've cheated. And you say, well, I don't know what he'll do to me. Well, I'm pretty sure he'll pray about it and ask the Lord to guide. It depends on the proportion in which you did it. But I've had some students who cheated so much that one person just handed in somebody else's notebook. He just waited until quiz, objective examination on the book of Exodus. So your assignment will be for Wednesday, October 31st. Spend at least an hour and a half in reviewing the notes on Exodus, the class notes on Exodus. Spend at least an hour and a half in reviewing the class notes on Exodus. The one reason I want you to do this is that I want to get you into the principle of gradual review for an examination. You just, the night before or even the morning before you take the exam, often you do a lot of review. Well, I want that. I think that's important. No matter how much I've studied in preparation for a class or for a message, I always like to look it over just before I teach or preach. But I want it to be built on more than that. Take time for the thing to go into your soul. You preachers, I think, would find that very important. My dad used to emphasize that when he taught his men's Bible class. He'd come home Sunday from church, have his Sunday dinner, and then take his Sunday afternoon nap. And then he would read over the lesson for the next Sunday. Then he wouldn't do much with it during the week. He was a businessman, very busy during the week. But Friday night, he'd give it a real tussle. And Saturday night, he'd give it another tussle. And then Sunday morning, he'd put the finishing touches on. Well, you see, he had that thing before him all through the week. Some preachers really wait